following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hello, everyone. This is Rob Deininger of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And today I'm going to be talking about the state of the New York Giants. I know a lot has gone on so far, and the big talking point is the Odell Beckham trade. And a lot of fans seem to be up in arms about it. Me, not so much. It seems like a lot of fans, a lot of older Giants fans, they're happy to see him go. The younger fans, on the other hand, they're in an uproar. They think he's the best player in Giants history, bigger than Lawrence Taylor. And frankly, he doesn't come close. Fans more my age, 40 and older, he's a great player, great talent. But at the end of the day, it takes more than a star wide receiver to win football games. The other big news is Landon Collins. They let walk away. I'm a little unhappy about that in the sense that they didn't get anything in return for him. If you knew you were going to let him walk at the end of last year, you should have traded him when you had the opportunity. Rumors out there were that Kansas City was offering a 3 or a 4 for him, and if you knew you were going to let him walk away, then they should have made a deal last year with Kansas City. But letting Landon Collins go, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, he didn't make the Pro Bowl 3 of the last 4 years, but in this day and age, Pro Bowls are highly overrated. Outside of one really good year back in 2016, he really hasn't done much since. And even though he's one of the best safeties when it comes to playing in the box, he has shown over the last few years that he's a liability in pass coverage. And today's NFL, with the way teams are throwing the ball all over the field, you need a safety that can play in coverage. And also, he's been known to quit in football games. If you remember, in 2017, when the Giants finished 3-13, the defense quit in the second half of that season, including Landon Collins. And there were times this past season where he would just disappear. And couple that with the fact that he can't pass coverage, it's not the worst thing that he's no longer with the team. I mean, he was a good player, but you need someone that can help out there in the secondary. And the Giants this year gave up way too many points, way too many yards, especially in the passing game. The Giants' defense cost us 4 wins in 2018. They gave up the lead with under 2 minutes to go in 4 games. So instead of finishing 5-11, we could have been 9-7 and in the playoffs. But like I said, defense cost us 4 games with under 2 minutes to go. And on the year, the Giants lost 8 games by 7 points or less. 5 of those 8 games we lost by 3 points. And given how bad our offensive line was in the first half of the season, we were in games. We had chances to win games, but our defense just couldn't hold the lead for us. And especially the game against Carolina early in the year, where Eli generates 15 points in the last 7 minutes of the game, and with under a minute to go, the Giants defense couldn't get a stop, and Carolina wound up kicking a 63-yard field goal to win the game. I mean, it was brutal. And against Dallas at the end of the year, we lost 36-35. We had the lead with under 2 minutes to go, and they let Dak Prescott and the Cowboys drive down the field. We get a stop on 3rd down, and it's 4th down and like 15 or something like that, and Prescott runs around and winds up throwing a 35-yard touchdown pass on fourth down. And even then, we were still winning 35-34, and they went for the two-point conversion, which we couldn't stop. Cowboys win 36-35. Against Indianapolis, Eli gets them the lead, and then with under 2 minutes to go, they let Andrew Luck drive all the way down the field and scores a touchdown with 30 seconds left in the game. I mean, this was the theme for the Giants all year long. I mean, the second game against Philadelphia, we had a 19-3 lead at halftime. We wound up losing that game 25-22. And the defense tried hard to give other games away, like the Tampa Bay game where we were up by 2-3 scores at one point, and we barely hang on to win 38-35. The Chicago game, we won in overtime 30-27, but again, we were up by a couple scores, and the defense allowed Chicago back in the game, and we barely hung on. So defense is going to play a big part in what we do next year. We need a pass rusher. I know we let Olivier Vernon go, but he missed 5 games last year. It took him another 3-4 games really to get into the groove of things. And even though he did lead the team in sacks with 7, he is prone to injury, and he's getting up there in age, and he was due to make a lot of money. The one guy on defense I thought we'd move or cut, and that's Alex Ogletree. He led the Giants in interceptions last year with 5, but again, he's another one that just can't help out in pass coverage. He's another one that's a liability in pass coverage, and I think PFF had him graded as a 72nd best linebacker at his position. He was graded the 72nd best linebacker, and yet this year he's going to get paid. He's going to be the third highest paid player at his position. He's grossly overpaid, But having Vernon gone and Landon Collins, it's going to hurt as far as getting pressure on the quarterback and stopping the run. But Collins was hurting us in the passing game. I mean, he was getting torched by the better tight ends in the NFL. I mean, we couldn't cover a seam route last year. But back to Odell Beckham. The fans nowadays, especially the younger fans, to them stats are more important than actual wins. As long as the player is producing and getting his numbers, then as far as they're concerned, he's a great player. And you got to do whatever it takes to make sure you keep them and keep them happy. And that's not how it works. I mean, as much as I love the guy's talent, I lost all respect for him in that Carolina game back in 2015. That game showed you just what kind of person and player he is, and he is a selfish player. It's all about him. Odell Beckham, he came first. Giants, they came second. And if you remember in that game, that was against Carolina. That was a pivotal game. We had to win that game. It was a must-win game. We were fighting for a chance to go to the playoffs. We were in the mix for a wild card spot, and we needed that game. And that entire first half, he did not care about trying to start off the game. Eli threw him a beautiful deep bomb that hit him in the hands, and he dropped it. It would have been a quick 7 points on our first possession. And then after that, all he cared about was trying to hit and cause physical harm to Josh Norman. And it cost us the game. I remember vividly screaming at my TV for Tom Coughlin, not just to bench him, but throw him out of the game. I mean, his behavior was Bush League. And it showed you just what kind of person and player he is, and that was a selfish player. I mean, not only did Tom Coughlin needed to get to the playoffs to keep his job, but we needed that win in order to stay in the playoff hunt. That year in 2015, the Giants had no problem scoring points. Eli had one of his best years throwing the football. He threw for well over 4,000 yards, had 35 touchdown passes that year, which was second in the NFL behind only Tom Brady. But our defense, unfortunately, was historically bad. It was the worst in the history of the New York Giants. And the Giants have been around since 1920, and that 2015 defense was the worst in their history. And it was one of the worst in the history of the NFL. And so we needed to put up points that game, and Odell Beckham he didn't care. He came around in the second half, but the damage was done. We lost that game. We lost a chance to go to the playoffs, and Tom Coughlin eventually got fired. But, I mean, it just shows you how selfish he is when you talk about how winning is the most important thing, yet that game you could care less about winning and more about causing physical harm to someone. It was just ridiculous. And I know the fans are upset. They think he's the next big giant player to come around since LT, but he is no Lawrence Taylor. For all Lawrence Taylor's off-the-field problems, he never put himself above the team. He never put himself before the team. Lawrence Taylor was someone, if he got 3 sacks and had 15 tackles and the Giants lost, he'd be pissed. He'd rather have no sacks, 7 tackles, and the Giants won the game. Whereas Odell Beckham, as long as he got his stats, he was happy. But the moment, if he didn't get his stats and he won, he was sour. And you don't need someone like that on your team. I mean, yeah, he's a great talent. The players in the locker room, they love him, which makes him all the more dangerous in the locker room. I mean, the Giants gave him his money, goes on TV, basically says he'd rather be in L.A., doesn't show his quarterback or give his quarterback any support. And then later on in the year, he questions the coaching staff, questions the play calling, complains that he's not involved in the game planning. Like, what reason does a wide receiver need to have input on a game plan? I mean, there's no reason. The only person who should have any input on what the game plan should be is the quarterback, and that goes for any quarterback on any team. That's the only player that should be given any input on a game plan. And last year, and also, I don't get all this Eli Manning hatred that's all of a sudden been coming from the fans this past year. In 2017, when Eli got benched, the fans were up in arms in anger that they benched Eli Manning. That was in 2017. What happened between then and now that people all of a sudden think Eli's done and they want him gone? I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, I don't know what people are watching, but Eli Manning is not done. He's played behind one of the worst offensive lines in football for the past 3 years. Really, actually longer. Last year, to start the season, Eli Manning, after week 8, when they went to their bye week, was on pace to be sacked 60 times. His career high in sacks before this past season was 39 in 2013. And he was on pace at one point to be sacked nearly 60 times. And going into their bye week after week 8, Saquon, for as great as he is and for how great of a season he had, he was leading the NFL in negative yards rushing. He was experiencing contact in 0.8 seconds. I mean, that means he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. So if you have a generational running back who can't even get out of the backfield, what do you think a pocket passer like Eli, who's not mobile, what chances does he have of trying to find someone downfield when he doesn't have time to look downfield? I mean, in the first half of the season, the Giants ended up releasing their right guard and their right tackle because that's how bad they were. And by the time they got to their bye week, they were on their third right tackle, third right guard, and third center. I mean, Eli, after week 8, had a release time of 2.44 seconds. I mean, he just had enough time to get into his drop and get rid of the football. He didn't have enough time to let routes develop in order to hit players down the field. And even though he didn't have the greatest first half, Eli Manning did finish the season as one of the top 10 rated quarterbacks on deep passes, on balls that traveled 20 yards or more in the air. And out of those 10 quarterbacks, Eli had the best completion percentage. And going into the second half of the season, we claimed the right guard Brown off of waivers. I think it was from the Rams. And he actually helped solidify the offensive line, along with their rookie Hernandez at left guard started playing better, which helped out Nate Soldier, who really did not live up to the money, the contract that they gave him. But really, adding Brown really did help solidify the offense. And also, Shermer challenged Saquon to run in between the tackles instead of trying to bounce everything outside. Because in the first half of the season, the first 8 games, Barkley had 20 carries against Jacksonville in game 1, but in the next 7 games didn't have more than 14 carries a game. He'd rip off 2, 3, 4 big runs in a game, but then the other 10 carries went for 2 yards or less, and most of the time it was less. So in the second half of the season, Shermer challenged Saquon to run in between the tackles. He says it's better to get a 2-yard gain than a 2-yard loss, and he was right. And in the second half of the season, with the addition of Brown and Hernandez playing better, which helped out Soldier, the Giants were able to protect Eli better. Saquon was running between the tackles and getting better blocking, was able to consistently run the football. And in the second half of the season, the Giants averaged 26 points per game. In fact, they finished the season with the most points scored in the NFC East. They scored more points per game than any team in the NFC East. They were able to put up points. Unfortunately, their defense, they couldn't stop anybody. And with all this hoopla about how with Odell being gone, Eli's going to be done, even though they've been saying Eli's done. But the Giants put up more points in the last 5 games last year without Odell Beckham Jr. They scored their most points in games without Odell actually playing. In Week 14, the Giants put up 40 points against Washington. They got shut out by Tennessee. Otherwise, they would have averaged over 30 points in the second half of the season. But against Indy, they put up 27. Against Dallas, they put up 35. They scored their most points in the last 4 games, and they did it without Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, as a Giants fan, I prefer a solid offensive line and a consistent running game over a talented, flashy wide receiver any day. I mean, Eli Manning was always better when he had a consistent running game and time to throw the football, which is why all this hatred for Eli Manning is so frustrating. They're going on about how immobile he is. I mean, I don't know how long these supposed Giant fans have been Giant fans, but Eli Manning has always been immobile. He's been a pocket passer his entire career. And I don't get how people say he's done, especially when he's been playing behind the worst offensive line, or at least one of the worst offensive line in the NFL. I mean, in 2015, when the Giants were putting up all those points, they had their running game ranked 18th in the NFL that year. And then in 2016, when Ben McAdoo took over for Tom Coughlin, that running game went from 18th down to 30th in the NFL. And they ran the 11 personnel over 95% of the time. They were the most predictable offense. And McAdoo, he liked throwing the ball downfield. But because the Giants couldn't protect Eli Manning, they were forced to throw slants all the time. And if you remember, in 2016, Odell, I don't know how many 5-yard slant passes to the house. And that year, the Giants went 11-5, went to the playoffs, but they weren't a good team. They benefited from a very weak schedule. Their defense, which Jerry Reese upgraded by spending $250 million to upgrade it, played above their ability. And on offense, Eli and Odell made enough plays to win close games. And if you remember, in that playoff game against Green Bay, Eli Manning, our aging quarterback, the guy everyone says is done, was the only player on offense to show up. He came out throwing dimes. And what happened? Odell Beckham, for the first time, was on the big stage, an opportunity to show how great he is, and he choked. He dropped 4, 5, maybe 6 passes that game, including a touchdown pass. Eli hit him right in the hands, and he's staring at his hands as if he bought them at a store. Your goddamn hands. And not only that, Sterling Shepard dropped a pass in the end zone, too. In fact, I think Shepard might have dropped 2 passes in the end zone. But either way, the Giants could have been up by 2 scores, and instead of having 14 points, they had 6. And as you know, in the second half, the defense collapsed, and the Giants lost the game. But Eli was a victim of his top 3 receivers, Beckham, Shepard, and Cruz, I think combined for something like 12 drop passes in that game. And Odell had at least half of them. And I know a lot of these younger fans, the supposed Giant fans, think that Eli Manning would have been nothing without Odell the last 5 years, which I find hysterical because I'm pretty sure Eli has lifted 2 Vince Lombardi trophies before Beckham ever joined the team. So, Eli's shown he doesn't need a wide receiver as talented as OBJ in order to win. And he showed that last year, too, when Beckham didn't play the last 4 games. And a lot of people, and there's a lot of reports suggesting that Odell wasn't even hurt. He just bailed on the team the last 4 games of the season. Because he got hurt, I think, in the Philadelphia game in Week 12. And he played against Chicago. And then against Washington in Week 14, he didn't play because he was hurt. He played against Philly because at that time the Giants there was still, I think, a very long shot of making the playoffs. It was a long shot, but I think they still had a shot. But once they were eliminated, all of a sudden that injury was too much for him to play with. And a lot of people think that he bailed on his team. In fact, he wasn't even in the building those last 4 games. And the crazy thing is the Giants played better without him there. And, for a guy who's as very likable as he is, like I said, he could have a negative impact in the locker room, even though he's a likable guy. When you have someone complaining about your quarterback, complaining about your coaching staff, your play calling, etc., it's going to affect the other players and how they look at the coaches and quarterback. And I don't know what the Giants are doing going into the draft. I know a lot of fans, especially the more younger fans for the Giants, they want the Giants to take Dwayne Haskins. Frankly, I'm not sold on him. At Ohio State, he had great protection. I mean, great protection. And he had three of some of the fastest receivers in college football, including one of them whose name escapes me, but he was considered one of the best wide receivers in college football. So, I mean, he had great protection, great receivers. All of them ran a 40 and under 4.4. So he had speedsters. And he threw 50 touchdowns, but 44 of those 50 touchdowns came from a clean pocket where he had no one around him, and he could step up and throw the football. He's not going to have a clean pocket in the NFL. He's just not. And he did struggle against pressure, which is why he threw as many screen passes as he did at Ohio State. In fact, he threw more screen passes than any quarterback in this upcoming draft. So for a guy who only started one season, you don't know what you're going to get. He struggled throwing the football on the move, on bootlegs and such. Struggled against pressure. The only thing that he did show was that, yeah, he has a great arm, great touch, can read a defense, but when you're not getting hit, when you're not getting hassled, anyone's going to look good if you got the talent to throw a football. But he didn't show you anything that would suggest, yeah, when things are going, everything's going crazy around him, he's getting beat up. He didn't show you that he could step up in moments like that. There were no moments like that where he had to rise to the occasion. Everything came easy for him. Me personally, I would rather see the Giants try to get Josh Rosen. He would be more suited for Pat Shurmur's offense. But I think what the Giants should do, and this is just my opinion, is I think they got to go defense. I mean, the 2 number 1 picks they have, go get a couple of guys on defense. Get a pass rusher and a linebacker, or get a defensive lineman and a linebacker, or a linebacker and a corner. But I think you got to go defense in this draft. I still think you can win with Eli this year, and I think Eli could play 2 more years. And as long as he has protection and a consistent running game, the Giants' offense will be fine. The only thing they need really on offense is a right tackle. And if they can get a right tackle and run the football, they will be fine on offense. They will put up points. And I love the signing of Tate. I think he's an underrated receiver. He's a pro. He's a great route runner. He's tough. He doesn't miss games, something that OBJ had a problem doing. He missed 16 games in the last 2 seasons. You know, and that's the other thing. In 2017, Eli had nobody to throw the football to. Even though Beckham only missed technically 12 games in 2017, he really only played in 1 game, and that was Week 4 against Philly. In 2017, all 3 of Eli's receivers, Beckham, Shepard, and Brandon Marshall, all were hurt going into the season. In fact, Odell didn't even play Week 1. Week 2, he was on a snap count and only played 20 snaps. And then in Week 3, he was still on snap restriction, and it wasn't until Week 4 that he went all out against Philadelphia, and he had a great game. He had over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But then in Week 5, what happened? He was lost for the year. And so is Brandon Marshall. He came into the season playing on 2 bad feet, looked like a shell of himself, and he was lost for the season. And Shepard came in with a bad hamstring, bad back. He missed, I think, 5 games that season and was banged up for every game he was in. And in 2017, Eli led the NFL with the fastest release time with 2.4 seconds. I mean, he had no running game, no protection, and no one to throw the ball to. And when he got benched, everybody was up in arms. And then all of a sudden this past year, everyone, including some of the loyalist Giant fans I know, is screaming that he's done. And I just don't see it. I mean, even Dave Gettleman said a quarterback can't complete passes when he's throwing from his back. You got to keep Eli upright. You keep him upright, and he's gonna sling the football. He's shown he can throw the football. I don't get where this whole thing of Eli's done came from. And I mean, I understand we haven't been winning a lot of football games over the years, but there's nothing to suggest that he can't play no more, other than he's been playing behind a very bad offensive line. But these millennials, these younger fans, they think just because Odell Beckham puts up great numbers, he's somehow been carrying Eli Manning, which is so far from the truth. I mean, Beckham in the first 3 years had the most receptions and the most yards of any player in NFL history in the first 3 years. That was because Eli Manning was throwing him the football, and also because Odell Beckham was their only offensive weapon on offense. So Eli targeted him a lot. But it doesn't mean that Eli wouldn't have been nothing without him. I mean, Eli has shown he can win with a good group of wide receivers. I mean, his first playoff run, he had Plaxico and Armani Toomer. Plaxico, I think in 11 seasons, only had 3 years where he had over 1,000 yards receiving, and one of them was with the Giants. That year they won the Super Bowl in 2007. And Armani Toomer was at the end of his career. And in 2011, when the Giants went to the Super Bowl, he had Hakeem Nicks, Victor Cruz, and Mario Manningham. And if you remember, Hakeem Nicks was a beast in that playoff run. But when his contract was up, he wanted to be paid like a number 1 wide receiver. And the Giants said goodbye, walk. And he signed a 1-year deal with the Colts, betting on himself. And that year he started off number 3 on the Colts depth chart. And by midway through the season, Hakeem Nicks wasn't even seeing the field. And the following year he signed with Tennessee, and they cut him, and he was out of football. He left the Giants, and within 2 years he was out of football. Mario Manningham, who made some of the best catches I've ever seen in the playoffs, including that one in the Super Bowl where I think that was probably Eli's best throw, where he hit him on, it was third and 5, and he hit him down the sideline with 2 defenders draped on him, and he put it where only Mario Manningham could catch it. After that season, Mario Manningham, he wanted more money and more playing time, and the Giants said, thanks, but no thanks. So he signed with San Francisco, and he was out of football within 2 years. So Eli Manning has made receivers look better than they are. I mean, that's a fact. Jeremy Shockey is another one. He was a beast with New York, but once they shipped him away, he never put up the same kind of numbers he did when he was here playing with Eli. Just like Plaxico. Plaxico was more productive with Eli throwing him the ball than when he spent the first 7, 8 years with Pittsburgh. Eli makes receivers look better than they are. And so, I mean, even though Odell Beckham's a great wide receiver, Eli Manning, like Beckham said at his press conference when he signed that big contract, he thanked Eli for helping him get that money because, believe me, Eli helped him get that money. some of the passes Eli Manning has thrown Beckham over the years aren't easy catches, aren't easy throws, I mean. And Beckham made the hard catches look easy. So they almost looked routine, but they're not. Eli has a knack for putting the ball where only his receiver can get it. I mean, just this past year, Eli threw him some passes where he had defenders draped all over him, but Beckham made the catch. And also, Beckham didn't look the same this year after his injury. He lost a step. I mean, he's still fast, don't get me wrong, but he lost a step. I mean, he had defenders draped all over him. And I've heard people say that he had the best separation in football last year. I didn't see it. I don't care what the analytics and the numbers say. I watched the football games. He wasn't getting any separation. I mean, sure, there were times where he did have his defender beat, but it wasn't routine, that's for sure. I mean, he didn't. We're used to seeing Odell take a 5-yard slant to the house. That didn't happen once last year. And there were a few times where he had his receiver beat down the sideline. He had a good step or two on him, and the defender chased him down. And that didn't happen before he got hurt. He was outrunning anyone who was chasing him, but not this past year. So, I mean, you couple the fact that he looked a little slower this year. He was a headache to deal with. I mean, I'm sorry to see him go, but I'm not broken up about it like some of these other fans are, who are heartbroken or angry or just distraught, upset, whatever you want to say. But I'm not sad to see him leave, to tell you the truth. I mean, Giants, before he got there, Eli, he won 2 Super Bowls. He didn't need Odell Beckham then, and I don't think he needs him now. I mean, like I said, you give Eli time to throw, give him a consistent running game, and that will open up everything else in the passing game. And Eli was always better when he was able to spread the football around. And so I think you're going to see next year the Giants aren't going to have a problem putting up points. It's going to be defensively. Can they stop other teams? Can they protect the lead? And that starts by getting some young, fast talent in here, which we're going to have to do through the draft. But if I'm them, if you don't like any of the quarterbacks in this draft, don't get one just to appease the fans. Load up on defense. You got 12 picks, 2 in the first round. Go defense. And I mean, like I said, the Giants this past year scored more points than any team in their division. Put up more points per game than any team in their division. So they could score this past year, even though the first half of the year was ugly. I mean, but as far as Odell Beckham going and Landon Collins going, would I like to have kept them? Sure, but not sad to see them go. I mean, Landon Collins, like I said earlier, he was a liability in pass coverage. He just was. And Odell Beckham, for all his talent, he was a headache. He was a diva. He was selfish. And I don't care what anyone says, he did not care about winning football games. He cared about putting up his numbers and being considered one of the best, if not the best receiver in football. That's what mattered to him, was being known as the best receiver and getting his numbers, getting his targets, getting his receptions. You know, he would say all the right things, but that doesn't mean he believed them. And if you recall, I'm going to go back to that Panthers game in 2015 where he was trying to take off Josh Norman's head. After that game, other defenders started trying to get under his skin, and it worked. When Ben McAdoo took over that year, the Giants, the first 5 games of the season, they were winning. I think they were 4-1, something like that. But Odell Beckham didn't have a touchdown catch, and he was throwing tantrums on the sideline for a number of reasons. One, like I said, he didn't have a touchdown catch, and defenders were talking trash, getting under his skin, and he was throwing tantrums on the sideline and getting into tussles with the defenders who were covering him. And he had teammates, coaches, former teammates try to talk to him. Hall of Famers tried talking to him, and it didn't help. It wasn't until the publicity around his meltdowns got so big that the negativity that his persona was getting caused him to change. That's what made him change. Not his teammates begging him, not his coaches begging him, not former players or Hall of Famers like Chris Carter talking to him. It didn't work. It wasn't until his own image was taking such a beating that he decided to change. I mean, that just shows you again how selfish he is. He didn't care what his teammates or coaches had to say to him. It wasn't until his image was taking a negative beating that he decided to stop. It's all about him and his image. And that's what comes first with Odell Beckham Jr. And so let Cleveland have him. Let Cleveland deal with them. I mean, after he was traded within the first hour, reports were coming out that his agent wanted a new contract. He wanted more guaranteed money. I mean, so he was only 1 year into a 5-year deal, and if that's the case that he wanted a new contract, God help Cleveland. Because if he starts off the year slow, not getting his targets, not getting his receptions, not getting his touchdowns, they're going to have their hands full over there. And Baker Mayfield, for as good as he was last year as a rookie, he hasn't accomplished what Eli Manning has. And Eli Manning took chances with Odell as far as throwing. Eli would make some tough throws just to get Odell the ball. And to Odell's credit, he would make those catches. But let's see if Baker Mayfield's willing to throw some of those tough throws just to appease Odell Beckham Jr. Because if he doesn't, you'll see, he'll be throwing a tantrum on the sideline. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start losing, or if they're losing, you'll see him questioning the head coach over there and their play calling. So, in a way, I'm sad to see him go, but good riddance, too. I mean, they accomplished nothing with him, the Giants. And the one time they did get to the playoffs, he choked. Plain and simple, he choked. And I know these younger fans think he's the greatest player to ever wear a Giants uniform, but he's not even close. He wasn't even close. He might have been the best receiver the Giants ever had, but he was not the greatest player to ever don a Giants uniform. That belongs to players like LT and Mark Bavaro, Carl Banks, and those guys. And Eli Manning certainly deserves more respect from these fans, especially these younger fans who are in their late teens, early 20s, who probably barely remember his first Super Bowl win. I mean, they were probably like 10, 11, 12 years old when Eli won his first Super Bowl. And, I mean, he deserves the fans' respect, and he deserves to finish out his contract. And I guarantee you this year, he has nothing to lose, and if he has, like I said, if he has protection and a consistent running game, he'll put up his numbers. He'll throw for over 4,000 yards like he does every year. And I wouldn't be surprised this year if he has 30 touchdown passes. I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to come down to can their defense keep them in games? Can they protect the lead? You know, but to recap, I know Dave Gettleman had a plan last year, and that was to try to win last year. But He struck out on his free agent signings. He did a good job in the draft last year, but his free agent signings were a bust. Nate Soldier wasn't worth the money they gave him. The right guard he signed, the name escapes me, but he was a bust. They wound up cutting him before week 8. Eric Flowers, who they moved from left tackle to right tackle, was cut. He was a bust. He went to Jacksonville and was just as bad there. And now he's looking for a team. But the players that he brought in through free agency were just a bust. Jonathan Stewart, I don't even think I saw him on the field last year. Alex Ogletree, Alex Ogletree is set to make, I think Ogletree is set to make over $11 million in 2019. He's going to be, like I said, the third highest paid player at his position. And he was ranked 72nd out of linebackers last year. I know he had 5 interceptions and led the Giants in interceptions, but 3 of those were gifts. They were balls batted up in the air, and he just happened to be in the vicinity. So he got lucky there. But, he's a liability in the passing game. So he struck out in his free agents last year. I like the guys he signed so far. I know they brought on a lot of former Cardinals for defense, but that's okay. These guys they brought in can help the younger kids understand the defense a little bit more better and get them up to speed a little bit more quickly. But I like to trade for the right guard they got from Cleveland and the Vernon trade. That's going to help out big time on the offensive line. And really, all they need is a right tackle right now, and they can find one of those in the draft. So, like I said, if they can get some good young, fast defenders in this draft to fill up the holes on defense, we should be okay next year. And I wish Collins and Odell well. But I think as a team overall, we'll be better without them. I really do. We got burned so bad last year in the secondary, and Collins was part of the reason why. And like I said, Odell Beckham, he as great as he was a headache, and his body language on the field, even though when Eli's first option is on the other side of the field and Beckham happens to get open and he throws his hands up in the air on the field like, dude, I'm open, it just doesn't look good, and it sends a bad message throughout the team. With Odell, it was always about Odell, and I'm happy to see that gone. And I think Eli will play much better without him. The Giants showed, like I said, the last four or five games of the season, they put up their most points. And I think part of the reason why was because Odell wasn't there. But I'm interested to see how this draft's going to go. I really hope they don't take a quarterback at number 6. I'd like to see them go defense. I don't like Haskins. Murray, he looked great on tape. He looks great on tape, but his size, it worries me. I think he's too small. I know he's fast, but everyone in the NFL is fast, and I can see him wearing down as the season goes on. He'd be more apt to be injured being as small as he is. And so if Arizona does end up taking Murray with the number 1 pick, the Giants got to make a deal with Arizona to get Josh Rosen. Whether that's offering up their number 2 this year or next year, they got to work out something to get him, because I think he could have a really solid career as a pro. the only quarterback I really liked coming out of the draft last year was Baker Mayfield. But I thought the second best quarterback in that draft was Josh Rosen. I think Sam Darnold was overhyped. I watched a lot of him in college, and in that matchup between him and Rosen, only Rosen looked like an NFL quarterback in that game when UCLA played USC. And the one thing about Darnold that I noticed in college was he stared down his first read, and if his first read wasn't open, he looked to scramble behind the line of scrimmage until he could find an open receiver. And last year with the Jets, when he stayed in the pocket and he got pressured, he turned the ball over, which is something he did in college as well. You get pressure on Sam Darnold, he'll turn the ball over. And when the Jets tried moving him out of the pocket last year on a rollout or a bootleg, he was one of the worst-rated quarterbacks in the NFL last year, Sam Darnold. I think he had a quarterback rating of 50 when moving outside the pocket on a design play. He likes to move around and scramble on his own rather than have a play designed to do it. I mean, he looked like a rookie last year, but everything that I was worried about him coming out of college, it showed in the NFL last year. You get pressure on him, he turns the ball over. You got to lean on him to win the game for you, and he can't handle it. So I think Jets fans, I know they're happy to have him. I mean, I think he does have talent, and he'll have games where he throws for over 300 yards and throws for 3 touchdowns, but then he'll have those other games where he'll turn the ball over 2 or 3 times and cost you the game. Whereas Josh Rosen, he ran a pro-style offense at UCLA. He can make all the throws. He can make the reads. And unfortunately for him, he went to a team that fired the offensive coordinator during the season. Their head coach, he played behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. He had no one to throw the ball to, and he took a beating last year. And I think in order for him to have any kind of career, he's got to get out of Arizona. So if the Cardinals end up taking Murray, I hope the Giants make a strong push and a strong play to get Josh Rosen in a Giant uniform, because I think he'd be the perfect quarterback to succeed Eli Manning. And if you get him, let him sit this season behind Eli, and that way in 2020, the Giants are going to have up to about $100 million in cap space. You would have your quarterback of the future, and you didn't have to waste any of your draft picks this year to get him. But I'm not sure what they're going to do in this draft. The one thing that is frustrating as a fan is there doesn't seem to be a plan in place of what they're doing. I do think they can win while they rebuild, and I mean, I think they can too, but they do have to fill the holes on defense, and the only way to do that is through the draft. But I'm one of the people who believes in Eli and thinks he definitely has this year left in him and quite possibly another one. There's nothing in his game that suggests to me that he's done or that he's lost it or that he's deteriorating. I mean, Big Ben is in his late 30s. Phillips in his late 30s. Drew Brees is 40. But no one talks about how they're done, and if you look at their team, it's because they play behind a great offensive line. I mean, something Eli hasn't had. So I don't know how these Giant fans can honestly evaluate and judge Eli Manning based on playing behind a bad O-line. I mean, I don't care who you are, you play behind a bad O-line, you're going to look bad. I mean, Eli Manning and Aaron Rodgers put up the same exact stats in 2018. Their numbers were nearly identical. The only numbers that were different was Rodgers only threw 2 picks, Eli threw 11, which was a career best for Eli. That was the least amount of interceptions he's ever thrown in a season. But other than that, Aaron Rodgers and Eli Manning had identical stats. But people will say, but Aaron Rodgers played behind a bad O-line, whereas Eli's just done. I mean, Eli was playing behind a bad O-line. So, I mean, until you actually have him playing behind a decent offensive line, I don't know how anyone can say he's done. I mean, it's not right and it's not fair. But to recap, I'm not sad to see Landon Collins go. I wish we would have gotten something for him, especially if there was a deal on the table at the trade deadline last year for him. The rumors are there was a 3 or a 4 from Kansas City. We should have taken it, but otherwise, I'm really not sad to see him go, given the fact he was such a liability in the passing game, pass coverage. And Odell, there were reports that Dave Gettleman wanted to trade him last year, but Steve Tisch nixed it and told Gettleman to give him his contract. But like I said, last year, doing that ESPN interview, behind the scenes, he was difficult. During the year, he called out the head coach, called out the play calling. He complained that he wasn't involved in game planning, which no wide receiver should be. He just became too much and to deal with behind the scenes. And so I'm sad to see him go, but I'm not heartbroken. And I think actually in the long run we're going to be better off with them. Actually, I think we're going to be better off with them right from the jump. I think it's going to help the other guys. They'll step up. They'll have to step up, and you don't have to worry about one receiver demanding the ball while at the same time questioning the quarterback, questioning the head coach, questioning the play calling. So this could turn out to be a good move for the Giants. You know, and to recap the upcoming draft, I don't think we should take Dwayne Haskins. I'd rather take a quarterback later on in the mid-rounds, but I don't think our quarterback of the future is in this draft. I don't. I think what we need to hope for is that Arizona, like I said, takes Murray, and we make a play for Josh Rosen. Well, until next time, I'll recap the Giants draft after it's over. But until then, try to remain loyal, Giants fans. Good day.